For a long time, the properly implemented dual dynamic driver IEM wasn't very common. You had a lot of dual dynamic IEMs, yes, but a lot of them were simply just the same driver, just multiplied by 2. What I mean by properly implemented is when both of the dynamic drivers play its own frequency range. Let's say they each both have an actual crossover. In recent times, this kind of design has been implemented with varying degrees of success, for example, with the original Truth Ear Zero, all the way up to the $200+ mark, and now finally to the subject of this video, the 7Hz Ilua Ultra. At $29.99 USD MSRP, the Ilua Ultra is the cheapest of the properly implemented dual dynamic driver IEMs. And since we're talking about it on the Hangout.audio channel, it is, of course, critical approved. I like it. So let's get into it. Yes, you heard that right. A properly crossover dual dynamic driver setup for only $30 US, an evolution of the original Ilua in collaboration with HBB. First, let's just get into the non-audio aspects, and as with any budget IEMs, there's really not a lot to talk about here. In the Ilua Ultra, you basically get no accessories. There is no carrying case, you only get silicone tips of which you also get in the 01 as well as the 02. The cable is fine for the price, but I guess the biggest criticism that I would levy on the Ilua Ultra is on the abundance of color that is on its silicone tips. The build itself of the Ilua Ultra is that of injection molded plastic with an inset metal faceplate. The shape of the Ilua Ultra is also fairly bean-ish. There's not a lot of contouring and it results in a fairly shallow fit, at least for ears of my size. Now we get into the sound quality, which would arguably be the reason why you even consider buying an Ilua Ultra. And yes, the Ilua Ultra is a very, very nice sounding IEM, especially at its price point. The tuning kind of aims for a Harman-ish response with slight variations. For example, you have a little bit extra bass as well as slightly less upper mids, as well as a lot more upper treble. And in fact, this is a signature that is very similar to my very own Zero Blue 2, albeit not as Harman compliant, and also with a lot of that air frequencies. You could consider this a deep V-shaped response or even a U-shaped response. There's a lot of sub-bass presence as well as a lot of that air frequencies that kind of sort of balance each other out. The bass sounds clean owing to its very low shelf. The upper mids are very forward and energetic, and of course the treble might be its biggest weakness. To me, the Ilua Ultra is a V-shaped response, yes, but one that is of course on the brighter side of the V-shape, one that might be, in my experience, a little bit fatiguing for longer listening sessions. And the usual weaknesses of the Harman tunings can kind of sometimes show up as well. For example, slightly less lower mids, a little bit hot on the upper mids, albeit on the Ilua Ultra, it is actually slightly less contrasty compared to raw Harman. And as I've mentioned, yes, there is slightly more bass compared to raw Harman, but it is kind of slightly balanced out by the upper treble response. Depending on how you see it, this could be a very energetic, fun signature as well. But at the end of the day, the Ilua Ultra has a very capable V-shaped sound signature and with a bass response that literally is not possible with just a single dynamic driver. So for that reason alone, if you're looking for the extremely low and clean bass shelf without breaking the bank, then the Ilua Ultra is probably one of your cheapest options available. So now let's get into the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, why you should consider buying an Ilua Ultra and why you shouldn't. You should if you're looking for that nice, deep, V-shaped, Harman-ish response that just shoots energy straight into your ear holes. The Ilua Ultra is an unapologetically fun IEM that tries to inject as much energy as it can in both ends of the spectrum. It is fun, engaging, energetic, spicy, all of those similar descriptors all wrapped up into one little package. The second, if you're looking for that big bass emphasis, but also looking for it to be extremely well controlled in the low end, because such a response is really only possible with a multi-driver setup. And lastly, if you're just looking for something that is cheap, because the Ilua Ultra again retails for $29.99 US. That is by all means a steal. And as for why you shouldn't consider the Eloa Ultra, well, just like with the original Eloa, the shell shape as well as the fit can be a little bit awkward for some. It is at least awkward for me, where it can be a bit unnaturally shallow, but again, your mileage may vary. There are some problematic peaks in the upper treble which can make the Eloa Ultra sound fatiguing, sibilant, or even sharp, but it's also somewhat balanced out by the copious amounts of bass. And lastly, if you're simply someone who's not looking for that V-shaped signature, because again, the Eloa Ultra is unapologetically V-shaped. You're gonna get a lot of bass, and of course, you're gonna get a lot of treble. But hey, you don't have to take my word for it. You can always try it out for yourself at The Hangout. We're located at 200 South Bridge Road in Chinatown. Come on down, grab a cup of coffee or even an ice cream, and then ask for the Eloa Ultra. Try it out for yourself and then form your own opinions. And for those of you not privileged enough to be in Singapore, well, you can always come on down to hangout.audio, our online retail store. We ship globally and for free for orders over $30 US. This has been Critical for Hangout.audio, and remember kids, if it's not on the list, it doesn't exist. See you next week.